What's going on? Welcome to Tech with Sean, and today we're taking a look at the Gigabyte Gaming XOC RTX 3070. Okay, I want to give a shout out to Newegg for sending this card over. Well, they sent it over after I hit refresh on their site about 1,000 times and got a PNY 3070 in my cart and didn't check out in time. And then I hit refresh about another 1,000 times, and then I was able to buy this for $569. So thanks, Newegg. So the Founders Edition 3070 is $499, and this is $569. So exactly what are you getting for that extra $70? Well, this has a bigger triple fan cooler, and this has done a pretty good job from what I've seen so far of keeping this cool. And this card also has a higher power limit, so this can pull up to 270 watts. That's according to their specifications, and that's 50 watts more than the Founders Edition. So with that higher power limit and the triple fan cooler, this Gigabyte OC model should be able to sustain higher clocks than you would be able to on NVIDIA's Founders Edition card. The chip in these, it's all the same regardless of the model of card you have. It has 5,888 CUDA cores and 8 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory. And a little bit of a difference from the Founders Edition, this uses a standard 6-pin plus 8-pin for the power connector, and with those you should be able to pull up to 270 watts according to their spec. The outside of the card and the cooler has a nice kind of mostly metallic gray finish, I would say. The back plate is metal, but the top of the shroud here, this is all plastic, and it has a kind of partially silver, mostly grayish color, and black fans. On the back you have 2 DisplayPort and 2 HDMI outputs. It's not the most, crazy or inventive design, I would say, but it's less over the top than a lot of them, and I think this card's gonna look good in a lot of different systems. So if you have a Gigabyte board, or maybe you don't have a lot of color and stuff going on in your case and you want a more standard looking card that's going to perform well, this might be a good bet. This does have a triple fan cooler, but it's not the widest card in the world. You can see here that it just sticks out a little bit from the bracket. It's not going to be as wide as most 3080s or 3090s out there. And it's a little under 300 millimeters in length, so it's going to fit into more cases than some of the, top of the line really huge cooler cards will. So let's go ahead. I'll take my graphics card out of my system and pop this thing in, and we'll put this on the 9900K at 5 gigahertz with 32 gigabytes of DDR4, run it through some tests and see what it can do, as well as how it stacks up to the 3080. Okay, first up we have 3D Mark Firestrike, and these are all being run, these tests, at the stock clocks, so you can see it's boosting right up to about 1980 or so megahertz, and that got us a total score of 26,141 in here, and just for comparison on the 3080 we got 31,042, so not too shabby for the 3070. Next we have 3D Mark Port Royal, and this is the DirectX 12 ray tracing benchmark. And here you can see we got full utilization of the 3070, and we got 8,185. And again, just for comparison, the RTX 3080 was able to pull in just over 11,000 points. So it's a few thousand below the 3080, but still a respectable score. Next up, we have Red Dead Redemption 2, and this is probably one of the most demanding and good-looking games out. And this is a really good benchmark, I think, because it shows a lot of different areas of the game, and particularly the San Denis area is pretty taxing. So here is the final results from the benchmark, and you can see that we averaged 92 frames per second, and that is pretty good for 1440p at these settings. And for comparison, I ran it on the 3080, and that one pulled in an average of 112 frames per second. So kind of comparable, but the 3080 is definitely a step up, but the 3070 is still pushing a really good frame rate. So I think you'll be happy with it if you're playing Red Dead Redemption 2. Next is Forza Horizon 4, and this is running at 1440p ultra settings. And this is a game that your RTX 3000 card is going to be able to push at a pretty high frame rate, which is really nice because you get a smooth racing experience and it looks really good at the same time. This 3070 was able to give us an average of 161 frames per second at 1440p Ultra, so you'll definitely be able to take advantage of your high refresh monitor with this thing. Next is Far Cry New Dawn, and we saw another good performance, good showing from the 3070. We were able to push it to pretty much full utilization. This is again running at 1440p ultra settings, and the final tally on this one, we got an average of 111 frames per second. Next up, this is the benchmark from Strange Brigade, and this is a lighter weight game, so you can push some really high frame rates in this one. You can see we got well above 100, and the final total for this, we got 184 frames per second. Now I noticed the temperatures were pretty low as I was running these tests, and this is the OC model card, so I wanted to go ahead and overclock the GPU. So here you can see what I did. Basically just maxed out all the sliders. I set a 100 for the core offset, and then I set 400 on the memory offset, and then I reran this benchmark with the overclock settings. With the overclock, you can see that the GPU is boosting up well over 2000 megahertz, and the temperatures are still in check. So I think that this card with its triple fan and the extra power draw definitely gives you some headroom for a little bit more overclock on it. And on this one, we're able to pull 193 frames per second, so it's about 10 more frames per second, you know, not a huge increase, but not too bad either. And I think that if you play around with it, you can probably push the overclock maybe even a little further. Well, as you can see in that testing, this card holds its own pretty well in games and performs right about how you would expect something like a 2080 Ti would, so at that $569 price tag, it really doesn't seem like that bad of a deal. With the overclocking, we were able to get it up over 2000 megahertz no problem, and it didn't overheat or anything like that. And you know, at that $500-ish price tag, the 3070 also gets you in the door on the ray tracing, the NVENC encoding, DLSS 2.0, and some of those other features that you might find attractive. When this was in the open case, back there when I was testing it, I had the side panel off, and when it was totally open, this did have some noticeable coil whine. And the fans themselves weren't too loud, at least at the settings I was using, but under certain loads, at least on this motherboard, it did have some fairly noticeable coil whine. I will say that when I put the side back on the case, it was much less noticeable, so it differs on each motherboard, you know. If I put this in another system, it might not do it. But that is something to keep in mind with this. The fans are quiet, but you may notice some coil whine, and I have heard that in another review also. Overall though, this 3070 is going to get your foot in the door for 4K gaming. It's going to do a really good job at 1440p gaming, and it's going to keep you running at 1080p high refresh for many years probably. This Gigabyte model, more fans, higher power limit. You're going to pay a little bit more than the Founders Edition, but it is going to run cooler, and you will be able to achieve higher clocks. So whether that's worth the premium, it's up to you. Or, you know, maybe this is just the card that you're able to get, so it is what it is right now. Good luck to everybody on their hunt for cards out there. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, make sure to subscribe and drop a like, and I'll see you in the next video.